The light of the world, Derek Walcott. Kaya now. Gotta have Kaya now. Gotta have Kaya now. For the rain is falling. Marley was rocking on the transport stereo, and the beauty was humming the choruses quietly. I could see where the lights and the planes of her cheeks streaked and defined them. If this were a portrait, you'd leave the highlights for last. These lights silkened her black skin. I'd have put in an earring, something simple, in good gold for contrast. But she wore no jewelry. I imagined a powerful and sweet odor coming from her, as from a steel panther, and the head was nothing else but heraldic. When she looked at me, then away from me politely, because any staring at strangers is impolite, it was like a statue, like a black Delacroix liberty leading the people, the gently bulging whites of her eyes, the carved ebony mouth, the haft on the torso solid, and a woman's but gradually even that was going in the dusk, except the line of her profile, and the high-lit cheek, and I thought, oh beauty, you are the light of the world. It was not the only time I would think of that phrase in the 16-seater transport that hummed between Grosillet and the market, with its grate of charcoal and the litter of vegetables after Saturday sales, and the roaring rum shops outside whose bright doors you saw drunk women on pavements. The saddest of all things, winding up their week, winding down their week. The market, as it closed on this Saturday night, remembered the childhood of wandering gas lanterns, hung on poles at street corners, and the old roar of vendors and traffic when the lamplighter climbed, hooked the lantern on its pole, and moved on to another, and the children turned their faces to its mouth, their eyes white as their nighties. The market itself was closed in its involved darkness, and the shadows quarreled for bread in the shops, or quarreled for the former custom of quarreling in the electric rum shops. I remember the shadows. The van was slowly filling in the darkening depot. I sat in the front seat. I had no need for time. I looked at two girls, one in a yellow bodice and yellow shorts, with a flower in her hair, and lusted in peace. The other less interesting. That evening I had walked the streets of the town where I was born and grew up, thinking of my mother, with her white hair tinted by the dying dusk, and the tittling box houses that seemed perverse in their cramp. I had peered into parlors, with half-closed jealousies, at the dim furniture, Morris chairs, a center table with wax flowers, and a lithograph of Christ of the Sacred Heart vendors still selling to the empty streets, sweets, nuts, sodden chocolates, nut cakes, mints. An old woman with a straw hat over her handkerchief hobbled towards us with a basket. Somewhere some distance off was a heavier basket that she couldn't carry. She was in panic. She said to the driver, "Paquetez-moi terre," which is in her patois, "Don't leave me stranded," which is in her history and that of her people, "Don't leave me on earth," or by a shift of stress, "Don't leave me the earth for an inheritance." Paquetez-moi terre. Heavenly transport. Don't leave me on earth. I've had enough of it. The bus filled in the dark with heavy shadows that would not be left on earth. No, that would be left on the earth and would have to make out. Abandonment was something they had grown used to. And I had abandoned them. I knew that there, sitting in the transport, in the sea-quiet dusk with men hunched in canoes and the orange lights from the Fiji headland, black boats on the water, I, who could never solidify my shadow to be one of their shadows, had left them their earth, their white rum quarrels, and their coal bags, their hatred of corporals, of all authority. I was deeply in love with the woman by the window. I wanted to be going home with her this evening. I wanted her to have the key to our small house by the beach at Grosillet. I wanted her to change it to a smooth white nightie that would pour like water over the black rocks of her breast, to lie simply beside her by the ring of a brass lamp with a kerosene wick, and tell her in silence that her hair was like a hill forest at night, that a trickle of rivers was in her armpits, that I would buy her Benin if she wanted it, and never leave her on earth for the others too. Because I felt a great love that could bring me to tears and a pity that prickled my eyes like a nettle, I was afraid I might suddenly start sobbing on the public transport with the Marley going, and a small boy peering over the shoulders of the driver and me at the lights coming, at the rush of the road in the country darkness with lamps in the houses on the small hills and thickets of stars. I had abandoned them. I had left them on earth. I left them to sing Marley's songs of a sadness as real as the smell of rain on dry earth, or the smell of damp sand, and the bus felt warm with their neighborliness, their consideration, and the polite partings in the light of its hand lamps, and the blare and the thud soapy music, the claiming scent that came from their bodies. I wanted the transport to continue forever, for no one to descend and say a good night in the beams of the lamps and take the crooked path up to the lit door, guided by fireflies. I wanted her beauty to come into the warmth of considerate wood, to the relieved rattling of enamel plates in the kitchen, and the tree in the yard. But I came to my stop. Outside the Halcyon Hotel, the lounge would be full of transients like myself. Then I would walk with the surf up the beach. I got off the van without saying good night. Good night would be full of inexpressible love. They went on in their transport. They left me on earth. Then, a few yards ahead, the van stopped. A man shouted my name from the transport window. I walked up towards him. He held out something. A pack of cigarettes had dropped from the pocket. He gave it to me. I turned, hiding my tears. There was nothing they wanted, nothing I could give them, but this thing I have called the light of the world.